let's get to the agenda. And on the agenda are some friends of mine, people I think are the best in their field. One of them is Lynn Teo, who will be coming up. She's the Chief Marketing Officer of Northwestern Mutual Life. And what she's going to be doing is describing what I regard as remarkable, because I've helped a lot of people build their marketing organizations. And Lynn's like an architect, she's an engineer. And she has built a marketing organization for what matters, creating value. And she's doing that by elegantly connecting the dots across the key capabilities, disciplines, functions, and silos that really make the world go. So she's going to be talking about unlocking the value of marketing, driving customer experience and growth through structural transformation. Form follows functions. So a little bit about Lynn. She's got a broad remit. Her responsibilities include brand, product, marketing, field. By the way, so many of us in the financial services industry are in a B to B to C model. That's not a floor wax or a dessert topping. There's not a lot of conferences out there. There's a lot of consumer marketing conferences out there. I think you're going to find people here today who really understand what it means to sell through a channel to an end user, and Lynn is one of them. And when you look at a remit field, customer experience, digital marketing, marketing technology, operations, consumer insights, and market research. So that's a really broad span of control. But if you read my book, and if you don't sleep well, this is the book for you. It's a little bit of a textbook, but what it says is Lynn has got a broad remit spanning more or most of the customer journey, and that's rare, and that's really hard because it's pretty easy to run a silo. It's pretty hard to reach out across these things. You almost have to be a diplomat and a dictator at the same time. So I think I want you to think about what Lynn's accomplished. She's data-driven, revenue-centric, tech sector marketing executive specializing in driving growth for an enterprise through the build-out of modern marketing capabilities. She's been at Northwestern since September 2022, and in the last, 2.5 years, she's made some amazing changes. So the title of her speech is Marketing Transformation, and she really has. She's a veteran. You'd never believe it, but she's been in the industry for 24 years. She's led digital transformation initiatives across industries, advertising, publishing, education, retail, finance, travel, and health. She's a seasoned international executive. She's lived all over the world. She was a VP of digital marketing and head of marketing in Asia Pacific for CA Technologies. She expanded her role to become CMO and global marketing and customer experience executive for Wolters Kluwer Health, who I was just with last week in Chicago. And before joining Northwestern Mutual, Lynn served as the CMO of 3 lines of business at Thomson Reuters. So without further ado, I'd really like to invite who I regard as one of the more visionary and effective leaders in the industry, Lynn Teo.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Stephen. That was a very, very generous introduction. I'm actually thrilled to see that this is an intimate event, because I think it allows us to exchange ideas a lot more easily. And I'm a learner, as you are. So unlike everything that Stephen said, I didn't get it all figured out on day one when I took on the role. And I'm hoping that this session is, almost like a reflection back on decisions that I made, considerations that you can pick and choose, whatever's relevant for you. So I also want you all to know that one of my leadership team members, Jill Perlberg, is right here in the first table. She's going to be running a session later. And you can certainly have conversations with her about, kind of just the realities of what we're going through in transformation. All right. The other thing I wanted to expand on is, unlocking the value of marketing to drive customer experience and growth. Now, customer experience has, in my opinion, a much broader meaning if you operate in a B2B2C world, right? Because you have the end client, right, or the prospective customer that you're trying to reach. But many of you are aware that your field, your distribution, is also your customer in that sense, right? Because you have to win them over, and then through them, have them extend their reach into the, the eventual end state, which is the audience that you're looking to go after. So I just wanted to acknowledge, that customer experience here is the field experience, but also the client experience. All right, so let's go. So the first thing I just want to use to set the stage is the importance of embracing transformation. Easy to say, difficult to do. So I have 3 things that I want to offer up so that you can think about how you actually walk the talk, walk the walk. And the first thing is show of hands. How many of you in this room are part of your enterprise transformation agenda? Quick show of hands. All right, a little smaller than I would have thought. That was about maybe 15%. And maybe there isn't an enterprise transformation agenda. Maybe there is a functional level transformation agenda that's going on. Now, most times, as we all know, transformations are positioned to unlock new value for the organization, whether it's new revenue, it's white space, maybe there's market share that you're going after, but all of those things allow you to stay competitive. The first place to start, and this is from my learnings over the years, is to always ground your marketing in the enterprise strategic roadmap. All right, and these roadmaps can be 3 to 5 years. I've seen more in the 3-year time span, and they all have acronyms, right? Like VSP when I was at Wolters Kluwer, or it could be Change Program when I was at Thomson Reuters, or MYS, the multi-year strategy, which is what we're calling it at Northwestern Mutual. So don't underplay that ability to really speak the language of the enterprise, and to use that as a way to align your marketing strategies. So that's the first thing I kind of want you all to take away. The second one is probably not top of mind for you, but what are your company values? Any transformational initiative requires you to either recommit or resurface some of your company values, right? And you all have variations of this, whether it's challenge the status quo, lead with head, heart, and hands. You all have variations of your values that are captured, right? And I think it's important to use the time of transformation to surface some of those values, because transformation is difficult. It's disruptive because it changes the way people typically do things. But also, I think the values keep your teams grounded. That if you believe in challenging the status quo, then it makes the leap to that transformation initiative a lot easier. So that should manifest itself in a multitude of ways, right? When you recognize your team members, when you call out behaviors that you believe are exemplary, because that will help reinforce what it takes to move the organization forward, right? And don't underplay also the importance of setting a vision of what that new world will give you, right? So maybe it's greater efficiencies, or maybe it's new markets that you're now penetrating in the country or globally. So be very clear about what that end state is. The third one in embracing transformation, probably not very popular, is budgets. Most times transformation programs come with optimization of budgets, and my best advice to any marketing leader is to embrace that budget cut. I remember that first conversation I had with the CFO. 3 months after I joined, I was given a $3 million media cut, right? And as any leader, your task is to be creative, resourceful, and to take that budget cut as a way to reset what your teams are doing, right? So part of transformation is also unpacking what the teams have done, what activities have taken place, and the budget really is a forcing function. So once you start to rationalize that, then you can build on top of that to say, I'm gonna build, X amount more capabilities to get us Y amount of revenue. So embrace budget cuts. All right, so those are 3 things. The next tip here is to understand and honor the legacy of your brand. And here, the brand is the business, right? And the reason I say that is because before you can even try to create a strategy for growth, you need to understand what has made for the enterprise's success over the years. I'm very privileged that I'm part of I represent a brand that's been around for 167 years. That is a privilege and an honor. What that also tells me is that there are a lot of things working right for that particular business. So our mission as a financial services firm is to reduce the anxiety of Americans. And that mission is what guides us. It's very much a rallying cry. We are very proud of our legacy and our heritage in the life insurance space. Now, that said, we're continuing to innovate in that space, but today, Northwestern Mutual is known to be a holistic financial planning firm with products and services that straddle both the insurance line as well as the investment line. And together, they bring our clients better outcomes, better emotional benefits, better functional benefits. And that's important because you have to be very clear about where you've been, who you are today, so that you are able to position your marketing strategy appropriately. Where are your non-negotiables as a business? What are the principles that have made for your success? Usually, things that stand the test of time are typically the things that you need to keep. You should also reflect on the evolution of your brand narrative. Right up until the 1980s, Northwestern Mutual was still known as the quiet company. And that tells you something about the culture and the pride of the company and what moves the company. But over time, as I started to look in the archives of our brand narrative, I found that once we got into the mid-teens of 2000s, that narrative started to shift. It was about dreams. It was about spending your life living. Why? Because consumer mindsets have changed, right? And those belief systems have morphed. But I think the important thing is that you have to survey the landscape and figure out where your competition is in that narrative. And that served us really well. We had lots of our competitors jumping on that kind of maximizing your life, spend your life living ethos, but we realized that all of the ads were starting to look very similar. So that tells us that we might have worn out the capabilities of that brand narrative, and we had to reposition where and how we were going to show up in market that was competitively differentiating. So our most recent campaign is Better Way to Money. And while it sounds very simple, the crystallization of that brand promise came from months of surveying the competitive landscape, understanding what were the gaps. Consumers were telling us that blind spots were a big gap. The world of financial services and planning got so complicated for them, they were really overwhelmed, and that became the kernel of insight that we started to skew where marketing's value would be best delivered. We're still doing that true to our multi-year strategy. Trusted advisors, personalized planning. We have a proprietary planning software. We're about protecting and helping our clients prosper. All those things are true. So for all of you, before you can even begin to craft your marketing strategy, you need to look back. Even if it's 20 years back or 40 years back, knowing where you sit in that trajectory of transformation is critical, right? Now, the third thing I wanted to highlight, and I think most people in this room instinctively know this because Stephen has set the stage with the B2B2C business model. It is important for you to rationalize your marketing strategy in context of your business model. And really, the fundamental question you should be asking is, how does the business make money? Right? If you had to draw it on a blank sheet of paper, how would you explain it to someone about where the revenue streams are coming? And how do you ensure, in Northwestern Mutual parlance, we have this concept of future production potential, right? And that's really driven by our insurance offering. It's also about why the distribution is critical to us, because that's the engine of revenue growth. So you really have to understand, the capabilities, the limits of direct to consumer, right? I've been in organizations where, there was this notion of, hey, if we can sell direct to consumer overnight, we're gonna have a ton of savings. Well, not necessarily true, because depending on the complexity of your product, that might not be realistic. All right. Now, I've been in B2B organizations where account-based marketing is something you need to really be thinking about. So you're trying to market to a series of strategic accounts. These are big accounts, right? That you're going to have, budgets that are commensurate to the revenue streams. Now, in B2C, or direct to consumer, if you have an e-commerce business, a lot of what you're doing is really co-mingling your e-commerce with your digital capabilities, because that's the only way that you're selling. Or you could be an Uber with a B2B product line and a B2C product line, and you would have to design your marketing organization to be able to support that. So Northwestern Mutual is very unique. We're B2B2C, and we are exclusive distributors of our product, which means that our financial advisors are the only way in which a product reaches the hands of the consumer. They are small business owners, they're not our employees, so we have to lead by influence. So what is the equivalent of your business model? 90% of the touches go through a financial advisor. Whether, we think about them as the last mile of that sales process, right? We also think about them as the first stop whenever a client has a concern, right? So you really have to design for that business model. The other thing I think is remarkable about Northwestern Mutual is that we're vertically integrated. So we manufacture our products, and we own the entire distribution channels, in this case through influence, through incentives, through compensation structures. We attract very entrepreneurial financial advisors who are driven by the need to be successful, right, as individual business owners, but who also want to have the best product that they can put to market. As you deconstruct your business model, you also want to think about your segments. So the way we would serve our financial advisors would be different, depending on whether you're a solo advisor or you're a more sophisticated team. This notion of teams is becoming very much, an aspect of delivering the best value to our clients. So again, you really have to key in on all of the unique factors that make your business different. The other thing that most people may not be aware of is that the financial advisors themselves have to build their brand. So you are indirectly supporting, as a marketing function, not just your parent brand and building out the brand of Northwestern Mutual in my case, but there's also proven and empirical research that we've done that the value that a consumer gets is the combination of their financial advisor brand that's backed by this 167-year-old company. So you'll see the structures that I've had to build had to honor the fact that marketing has to serve small business owners who may not have marketing budget and want to know how they can show up in their communities in a way that's distinctive and competitive. Okay. And then last but not least, we all know that financial services, it's a long-term play. So our products and services last over generations. And so the marketing strategy has to be built so that the needs of your consumers are kind of part of, how you're delivering value. Whether it's life stage driven or generational, the marketing has to support that longevity of the relationship. Anything from 30 to 40 years for Northwestern Mutual. So it's only when you have done those three things that you will now be equipped to put pen to paper. So the organizational structure topic has always been one that fascinated me. And what I've seen is the push-pull of centralization of functions balanced with decentralization. The pendulum swings in organizations. Sometimes they go in cycles. What I will say is the hybrid model, in my opinion, gives you the best of both worlds. And the way that the org structure was designed at Northwestern Mutual's marketing team was what I call to helmet with our routes to market and our main distribution channel. So Jill owns our client marketing channel, and we also have a leader who runs the field marketing channel. Those channels are flanked by what I call centers of excellence. And the centers of excellence are brand strategy, product marketing, digital marketing, integrated media, measurement, operations, research, creative, right? Those are all of the supporting functions. And the reason I encourage a hybrid model is truly efficiency, but also a lot depends on the maturity of your function. If your function is still in the nascent stages, then your teams will benefit from the centralization of functional capabilities, because then that team can be squarely focused on knowing what is current, what is the most cutting edge in AI, how is media spend changing over time. Those are all critical tenets for your team to be kind of at the cusp of that development. And so a hybrid model really gives you that ability. There were two, kind of maybe more unusual combinations of teams that was built when I restructured the team. And the first one is putting together brand strategy and product marketing. I'd be very curious here, maybe with a show of hands. How many of you have brand strategy and product marketing grouped together in your organizations? Okay, I see about 5 or 6 hands. And the reason that's important is because when I reflected back on, past campaigns, right? Northwestern Mutual is known as the quiet company. I realized that there wasn't enough of a plumb line down to the needs of the consumers and the product lines that would deliver against a particular need. And so by putting brand strategy and product marketing together, what you're doing is you're being very deliberate about where the emotional payoff of brand now leads into a functional need, right? Acknowledging that 9 out of 10 times, people are typically not in market for the product. But for that 10% of the time, when they get married, or when they have a baby, or when they're trying to buy a new home, those are the moments in which you need the prospect to understand why your brand is relevant and what product lines or what use cases are relevant to them. So that was one strategic shift. The other one was coupling creative and insights. And I think a lot of that came from my career history when I was on the consulting side of the business, particularly, I would say, at Sapient. Sapient was known to be very attuned to user needs and having that inform creative solutions. So what we have seen there is, this kind of notion of creative ideation that's informed by the insight, because the insight captures where the business needs to go. So again, finding moments and finding places in your organization where you can co-mingle functions is one of the lessons I've learned at my time. All right, so I'm gonna pick up the pace here. Let's talk a little bit about systems thinking. All right. Let's talk a little bit about systems thinking. So the next two things, systems thinking and leveraging your distribution, this is about how you put the structure to work, right? Systems thinking helps you uncover where the synergies are between your work tracks. And a very important process that we launched as part of the restructure was the campaign process, which allows teams to understand where in the process should they be coming together to make sure that all the perspectives are brought to bear, and then when do they split off and do their own work with their respective teams. It's not an easy process because the team that I stepped into didn't really have a process of moving the work through. And a campaign process gives you clarity in accountabilities. It gives you clarity in the handoffs. And then I think also that the campaign process makes for better collaboration, not just within your marketing function, but also outside of the walls of marketing. So marketing is very tied to our product teams. Marketing is tied to our distribution or our field distribution. We're also very much tied to our data science, our data teams that feed us with the data that we need to optimize our campaigns. All right. The other important, I think, coupling is that the campaign process allowed us to take advantage of is the coupling of media, strategy, and creative. And the reason I say that is media channels and media planning have an optimization capability upfront, right? So instead of just having the strategy happen first and the creative happen, second, and then figure out where you want the creative to live, we have found it to be more effective for the media to be brought into the process at step one, because then you can talk about what are the experiences that are optimized for certain channels, who are the right people who will populate those channels. So you're creating your assets that are primed for that particular mode of delivery. So that's another thing I would encourage you all to do, is to bring the functions together from the outset before they all go off and create their different plans. So part of that systems thinking has also given us some interesting assets in the 2 years that have been there. Jill recently launched a podcast with the same name of our brand campaign, A Better Way to Money. And the reason that's important is because content marketing was one of the key pillars of our strategy. We wanted to show up in relevant ways, not in a push conversation to buy or to sell, but to really to be part of the dialogue, to coach, to educate, and to inform the consumers. We're also in the business of creating assets for our advisors, so systems thinking allows us to do that. And our social media team has been phenomenal at integrating themselves in our sponsorships program to make sure that whatever investments we're making in our sponsorships, we sponsor the Milwaukee Brewers, that those programs are built in a framework where social media assets, are planned and timed with what's happening in the stadium, as well as narratives that kind of have a life of their own before, during, and after a game. So those are all examples of what you can expect systems thinking to bring you. PR and comms, we all know that PR and comms is a wonderful earned media opportunity. And again, with the work that Jill has done for content marketing, our planning and progress study, which is a thought leadership piece, it's been around for the last 30-odd years. Those insights are now very deliberately folded into our campaign process so that people who encounter that earned media opportunity, one that's very popular is, what is the new retirement number? That particular research has brought us tremendous amount of traffic, and marketing is at the ready to convert that into leads so that our advisors are able to pick up on them. All right. So leveraging our distribution, that's my next tip for you. So the distribution is really what amplifies the reach of marketing in the local communities. Now, enabling the financial advisors, the platforms, and the tools that they use is a critical aspect of capitalizing on your distribution channel. We create turnkey assets. They could be emails. We also manage the websites of our financial advisors. And we also create canned social posts that have been verified and cleared with compliance so that it frees up our distribution to do the heavy lift of generating business without worrying about aspects of marketing that they may not be equipped to have in their organizations. The other thing I wanted to talk about is what we call the 10-3-1, which is the conversion metric that has been used at Northwestern Mutual for many, many years, right? So with 10 qualified leads, you get 3 fact finders. Fact finders is a process, a proprietary process by which our advisors sit down with clients and kind of craft a plan. And out of those 3 fact finders, you get 1 client. Now, the reason I think that is important is because it really spotlights the criticality of our distribution. Our digital leads on a good day is a single digit of the full breadth of leads that are being generated. Our field, on the other hand, is a high-touch business. So the investments that we make in our field marketing to support events is critical. Lots of referrals happen, lots of high-touch events, whether it's wine tasting or special leadership sessions. These are all high-value events that our field marketing team has invested in, and that continues to be the case. Last but not least, recruiting. Recruiting. The reason why recruiting is important is because we need to fuel the growth of the distribution. So we don't only think about the end consumer, but we think about what it takes to keep the pipeline of financial advisors healthy. Every financial advisor that we retain brings a multiplier effect to the revenue and the usable benefit of Northwestern Mutual. So that again is another aspect of how you think about the distribution channel and how you extend it. All right, the next one, co-creation. Co-creation is certainly a buzzword, but did you know that co-creation had been in existence at Northwestern Mutual since the 1800s? We've got committees and cadences in the course of the year that bring the field to our Milwaukee campus. And the reason for that is we invest in that relationship because that relationship is what it takes for that two-way trusting relationship to evolve. We have a marketing engagement program, and I kind of mentioned, the events that our field marketing organizes. There's a ton of field hospitality to make for networking and relationship building. We also have a field marketing committee where we run ideas around our campaigns, or there might be, concepts that we want to put before them. Our brand campaign was actually put before our field. We tested our concepts, we tested our tagline, we tested our storyboards, and we were willing to listen when the field told us that something wasn't resonating. That actually brings me to my next point, which is your willingness to pivot. If you build an organizational structure where members of your distribution are part of your marketing conversation, you will build an agile team that is unafraid to change course when the time calls for it. We all have heard of stories where, programs and initiatives are launched, and then 3 years later, you realize that it wasn't getting you where you want it to be. And so the relationship building is critical because you can now rely on that feedback loop to really help you optimize what you do as a marketing function. Not only did we actually go back to the drawing board for our brand campaign, we're also starting to look at the outcomes of our recruiting campaign. In November of last year, we launched, we called it the Game Changer campaign, which is we were looking at hiring career switchers into the profession of being a financial advisor. Now, we all have limitations on measurement. Some of our recruiting systems aren't really hooked up, so we can't really see how many people are making it to the interview. But now that said, because we have that relationship with our field, even in the absence of data, we are able to harness feedback from them about which assets are resonating. We created a day in the live videos, and it kind of gave people a flavor of what happens, in the day of the life of a financial advisor. We were given the feedback that it was an amazing asset. And so even though the data is lagging, that is an area where we know we have to continue to invest. What we are not sure of is the cost of acquisition as a result of putting media dollars in it. We know that referrals is an awesome way for our field to recruit. And so where we are now is really keeping our ear to the ground and really listening to our field to tell us whether or not they're seeing that major uptick in their pipeline of people and prospects, who are curious about learning more about the financial advisor career. Okay. And then diversifying your media. So I've consolidated all of our media teams, paid, owned, earned, and also made partnerships and sponsorships part of that team's remit. The reason being that we all know that paid and owned media play off each other. But more interestingly is that we're seeing partnerships being an unlock for us. Why? Because partnerships allow us to find audiences that share values or passions that allow us to reach the audience in way more efficient ways. So we're in the process of making sure we are able to measure the trade-off between putting money in traditional media or digital media versus sponsorships. The other thing that we were also able to do was to move away from linear. And there were the three, I call them the three S's that have delivered well for us. They are streaming, they're social, right? Social as a channel, but also paid search. And as a result of consolidating those teams, we have now been able to change our spend mix across top, mid and bottom funnel. We used to be spending upwards of 70% of our budget in our brand awareness. And we weren't finding that pull through to the mid and bottom funnel. So we've actually flipped the funnel. And in some cases, we're spending as much as 50% on the bottom funnel, 30%, 20 to 30% on the medium mid funnel, and reallocating so that we're being very targeted about where we show up for the brand, so that we have that kind of brand to demand pull through. All right. And last but not least, and I think I alluded to this before, one will never have perfect data. And so in the absence of perfect data, sometimes you have to look at leading indicators, right? And the leading indicators might be the number of engagements that you're getting. What are your OKRs and your KPIs that hint at the interest that your prospects are now expressing? What is your brand health measure? The brand health tracker was what we've been using for over 10 years, but because our remit is to now to be known as comprehensive financial planning, we have tweaked our brand index so that one of the areas of awareness and familiarity is the association of the Northwestern Mutual brand with comprehensive financial planning. So these are all indications of what you're doing is having an incremental benefit, but also don't underplay satisfaction, the satisfaction of your advisors. We have something called the Field Experience Index. It's a survey that we launch. And what that tells us is, how satisfied our advisors are with the support that they're getting from the marketing organization. So again, think creatively, even though you may not have a full pull through of your data, and think about phasing out your funnel and having conversion metrics or early indications of what you're doing and whether or not it's working. All right? And last but not least, we all know disruption is difficult. Do not forget to celebrate your team at every juncture. The launch of a campaign, Bravo points. We do that a lot at Northwestern Mutual. Having your, your lunches, your brown bag lunches, and also speaking about the team's achievements on a broader platform at the enterprise whenever possible. All right. So I think I only have a minute or two, but happy to take questions if there are any from the audience. Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
How are you measuring success in a way that motivates your team, the teamwork necessary to make all these connections work?
Yeah. The way we've done it is to be very business-centric in the articulation of our KPIs, our OKRs, or objectives and key results. So some of the OKRs speak to new client growth. They speak to elevating the brand. They also speak to things like the extent to which we're helping with the recruiting of financial advisors. So I think grounding what marketing does with hard business metrics keeps everyone motivated and feeling like they're adding to, the topmost goals of the enterprise.
It seems like one of the difficult things is how do you measure and track your activities to the financial growth and profitability of the business, so that all of these social media, all these platforms just don't get unmeasured.
Yeah, and Jill will speak to this, with much deeper expertise. But we work very closely with our corporate strategy team because a lot of the data that we need isn't automated. So this means that we have to reach across the aisle, whether it's creating holdouts, so you run experiments where it's with and without marketing. I think you kind of really have to get resourceful and creative about how you connect the dots, right? So marketing influence sales is something that we key in on, because then it becomes very clear that a lead would never have been generated if it had not been for a marketing activity. One of the experiments that Jill ran was also testing for the integration of our home office campaigns that are being launched through the field. And we're seeing 3 to 4 times more conversion when a campaign passes through the hands of the field and is actually sent by the field. And the field gets to opt in or opt out because they know the clients best. So those, again, are ways in which we can try to, be very concrete and objective about the contributions of marketing.
Hi. You talked about the advisor marketing as the last mile and something that you think about. I'm just curious to understand, have you seen certain successes in how you engage with your advisor audience in a way that's perhaps personalized based on what you know about the advisors?
Really good point. I would say that what we're trying to do is build out large teams. So this notion of advisors serving the needs, sometimes it's 2 different practices coming together. And so what we're seeing is, a lot of interest in how they would co-brand and how they would articulate the full suite of offerings, right? Because you typically would get a firm that's more steeped in the insurance products coming together with a high net worth or a wealth-centric practice, right? And you really want to talk about the sum of the parts versus, kind of each one just being specialized in something. But because the 2 things come together with our planning software. And so I think that for me is an area, looking at how we can support the brand building activities of large teams.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lynn.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.